I don't know whether you saw my video yesterday. I did a couple of changes since mid-game, and now it is early late game. I'm pushing Nightmare Dungeons without any issues. I'm tanking the Butcher 20 levels above me without any issues, even though killing him wasn't really that easy. But at the end of the day, at this point, this build has a lot of tankiness. It is almost impossible to die. The only thing that I have to work on is the fact that the damage isn't there yet. There is decent damage, but it feels that it's lackluster and I can do better. So all in all, this build has a lot of potential for two reasons. First thing first, once again, super tanky. Second thing, it is adaptable. As you're currently seeing, it is pretty good for pushing Nightmare Dungeons and endgame content. And second thing, it is extremely fast. In fact, it's one of the fastest builds in the game. It actually rivals the pure Shred because unlike Shred, you have much better time against bosses, and your clear speed, as you're currently seeing in Hell Tides, is quite good as well. And once again, there's a lot of work to do with that build, so it can become even better. So without any further ado, let's start the video. Alright, so I made a couple of adjustments to my Shred Slide build. First thing first, I got rid of Poison Creeper. You know, Poison Creeper wasn't really adding a lot of value when I was pushing, not pushing, but doing regular content, let's say regular dungeons or Nightmare Dungeons up to 3 or 4, 5 levels above my level. So if this was the case, I noticed that there were so many cases when I would be jumping on the monsters or be killing them so fast that I wouldn't even have to use the Poison Creeper. So I decided, okay, I'm going to remove the Poison Creeper, and I decided to use Bulwark instead. Then I decided to push content, so I decided to push Nightmare Dungeons 30 levels above me or so. And I realized that the biggest problem I had was that I wasn't really doing that much damage because I had to wait till my ult to come from cooldown so that I can eventually do damage. And my ult, you know, and this one right here, this one Petrify, I was using it actively mid-game. However, early late game, especially when I decided to push, I realized that it wasn't really working that well because of this huge cooldown gap, and it doesn't matter what I did. The build was just okay, but it wasn't feeling good. So the last modification that I did was that I removed my ultimate, and instead I use now Hurricane. And the most beautiful part about this build is the fact that it works everywhere. If you want to push, you have to do a few adjustments. For instance, instead of Natural Hurricane, you have to go to Savage Hurricane, and you need to remove the points from Shred, because if you want to push really strong Nightmare Dungeon, then Shred is not going to be that useful. You still must have it so that you can jump from place to place and you can aim your landslide, let's go it that way. And at certain situations it's useful just to escape for a sticky situation. But at the end of the day, the damage isn't what, let's say, constitutes the build for a Nightmare Dungeon pushing. So remove 4 points here and allocate them right there in Vigilance so that you can get 15% damage reduction every single time when you spam Bulwark. And of course I got for innate Earthturn Bulwark, which basically means that I'm abusing this bug at the moment. However, I managed to push, I believe level 50, not quite sure, without using it, so that's perfectly fine to push even without using the bug with this particular build. So in a way, the changes that I did from yesterday were significant, but you can clearly see how much better the build now is. So the only difference between the previous version of the build and this particular build is that if I am to push really difficult Nightmare Dungeons 30-40 levels above my level, I would remove 4 points from Shred and I'm going to allocate it here. This is really important so that I can make sure that I stay alive. This is the most important thing. And Shred, once again, Shred is not really the best skill for pushing. It is still useful because it helps you, let's say, position yourself, escape in certain situations, escape to safety, and it is your main point of, let's say, poisoning, right? Shred, you need to make sure that you crit with Shred so that you can poison, and the enemies are taking more damage if they are poisoned. And on top of everything, there is a Paragon specific note, which is called Heightened Malice, that makes sure that if there are 3 or more enemies that are poisoned, you're doing more damage. So Shred is important, not because it's going to kill them all if you're pushing Nightmare Dungeons, but because, for one thing, it will reduce the cooldown of your Trample and Bulwark, and another thing, Shred is going to be your main source of poisoning since you no longer have the Poison Creeper. So in a way, this is the thing that I established for this one day of testing the Poison Shred Slide build. When it comes to regular content, it is exactly the same. I just want to mention that in this particular version of the build there are no uniques whatsoever. Instead of the unique that I used before, that makes sure that every single time when you kill somebody with werewolf skill, you use the next bear skill for free. Currently I'm using Umbro so that I can take spirit back when I crowd control an enemy. So all in all, basically this ring solves my entire spirit issue with the build. And quite frankly, the unique that I used mid-game kind of falls late-game, because if you want to push, there will be a lot of cases when Shred will be simply unable to kill any monster around you. So, yeah, it's not really that great. But all in all, the build is still extremely fast for pushing content, such as, for instance, but in a way, the build is still pretty good for doing regular content, not only for pushing, for instance, Helltides. So guys, I'm still working on the build and I will come up with another video once I'm done. This is the reason why today I won't be doing any, I'm not going to provide any links for the build or any further explanations. I just wanted to let you know that I actually decided to experiment with the build further and the results that I achieved are pretty good. So yeah, see you next time guys, take care and expect another video tomorrow.
Perfect.